You're welcome to the Economy and Politics Show. I'm Ottoabasi Abasiekong. This edition will continue our discourse on Nigeria's 2024 macroeconomic outlook, and to all our viewers, we're in the season of financial and economic outlooks for the year, from the global, national, subnationals, and corporates. Joining me virtually for this conversation is Mr. Kalu Aja, a financial analyst. Thank you for being part of the show today, Mr. Kalu Aja.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Let us begin with the various outlooks that we will be receiving so far since January 2nd. They've been looking at the fact that we will definitely be on the path to an 18-month recovery period. That, if you calculate from this month, that will be till June 2025, which is really a lot of period for the households. So what is your advice? How can households navigate this period? Because it's going to be quite demanding for them. They're going through a lot already from the reforms, and they'll have to navigate this period again, and including businesses.
Yeah, great question. The Nigerian Bureau of Statistics has already told us that household consumption has collapsed. This is way back in 2022. Household consumption was zero. So a Nigerian household today has seen their costs go up, but their wages stay flat, unless you add the 5,000 or so that the federal guys have got to the minimum wage. So you have to go back to the very, very basics of financial planning, right? Which means you want to spend less by budgeting, and then you want to see if you can earn more by monetizing those assets. It's really that basic. You have to now drop a budget, and that's going to be a needs budget, not really a wants budget. It's going to be really, what do we need to survive? Food, rent, education. That's really it. And outside that, you then have to see, how can I grow income? It's hard to grow income. It's much easier to monetize the assets you have already. So if you have two cars, for instance, you have to maybe put on the road to do Uber or something like that. If you have a boys' quarters, you have to maybe rent out that boys' quarters. If you have lots of clothes, lots of shoes, you might look at selling and just getting cash out. It's down to the basics now. We really can't do any, sophisticated financial planning for the Nigerian household that are under extreme cost pressures. So budget, spend less, and then monetize the assets you already have. That's really what we can say at the general level to the Nigerian household.
Quite remarkable to hear that from you, because not just for the households, even for our government, we keep hearing the fact that they need to look into monetizing their assets. And just recently, we heard that the Minister of Finance issued a letter where, of course, the transfer of power of attorney from the Bureau of Public Enterprise, 40% government holding, to the Ministry of Finance Incorporated, which is the asset manager of government assets, 40% of the holdings, 11 electricity distribution companies. So when I hear you talk about monetizing assets, I think that's a very key word. We just have to look inward and really create value amidst the challenge. But let me take you to the issue of inflation. Inflation has the report just came out recently again, and it's risen to 28.9% for headline inflation, while the food inflation is 33.9%. It's on the rise. And you've just talked about the fact that wages are not increasing. So how does one hedge against inflation to preserve value this period? I know you had a conversation with a market analyst recently about where to invest and how to invest even 1 million naira. So just talk to us about how we can hedge against inflation, creating value amidst the challenge.
That's true. Inflation in Nigeria is going up and up and up. And again, it's not the numbers per se, but the trend that both headline and food inflation are increasing. They've been increasing. So the question is, how do you avoid inflation? The simple answer is that you avoid the naira. If you avoid holding the naira for longer period, then you have a chance to avoid the naira inflation, which means you are paid in naira. Of course, you have to spend in naira. But if you want to hold that naira for more than, say, 90 days, you might be well advised to diversify that holding. The conversation you mentioned, the gentleman said the way to avoid inflation, if you are like an investor, is to build a portfolio. And in his portfolio, he talked about fixed income Nigeria, which was giving you very, very high rates. But then he brought in fixed income US, which gives you the 5%, but in the US. He talked about gold, which is to protect the portfolio from the dips and of prices, even commodities, even crypto. He built a basket around Nigerian and foreign asset classes. The idea was to give you growth from the naira asset because interest rates are high as inflation is high, but of course you are defended by holding dollar assets. So the simple answer is not to really invest in one currency. In this case, not to invest in a naira because that exposes you to inflation. But the larger question is, what is driving the inflation? It's food. Food prices are what is driving both the baseline, the headline, any inflation in Nigeria, it's food. So if you have a way to get cheap food as a household in Nigeria, if it means you sponsoring once a month, you take a truck and you drive to your village and you buy gari, the tubers, the tomatoes, and you bring it back and you share to your street, which means your street contributes. You guys hire a truck, you go to the hinterland, the villages, and you bring those food back yourselves. You pay the cost of transportation and then you share those goods. That's one way for you to avoid buying the goods from the market that's already been inflation priced in. So you're going to get a bit innovative. It's really food. Fuel is not a lot. People think it's a lot of the inflation is fuel, but it's really food. More than 50% of the inflation in Nigeria is driven by food. So if you can eliminate the cost of buying food by buying it directly yourself, you reduce that. If you reduce holding naira, that's another strategy. So again, it's baseline, very, very, very basic, simple things that you have to do right now to take you from this hump. And hopefully, like you said, wait for the 18 months to come and then let's see what would happen there.
Yeah, Carlo, I agree that yes, it's good to go directly to the hinterland, your place, the village or town to get those foodstuffs. But also the inputs into what causes inflation, logistics. You want to move that maybe if you're in the east, the hours you're going to spend trying to bring it if you're staying in Lagos or Abuja, those are other challenges, logistics, security issues as you've seen affecting even the aggregate input and all that. Just 30 seconds if you could speak to that. I mean, yes, if it's driven by food, but the ways to get that, the logistics, the challenges on movement and all that, it remains an issue.
Which is true, but either ways, you're still going to pay logistics. If you buy it at the market, you're still paying logistics that the guy that brought it to the market, to the city, has already paid. So in this case, you are trying to remove the margin. What you're targeting is just the reseller margin. That's all you're going to save. So if I drive to Edo and I buy gari in Edo, I'm still going to pay for fuel, still pay for stuff for the road, but I remove the margin, and that margin becomes my own savings. So I can maybe buy more or extend my own budget. I'm trying to stretch 1 naira as far as I can go. And anywhere I see a savings, I want to grab it. So even if just to take away the margin, that's okay for me for now. Whilst I work on maybe fuel price coming down with Dangote and all that kind of stuff. But for now, I'm targeting just that reseller margin. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it just all goes down, like you said, planning it. Planning is very important and getting in bulk. But again, those challenges have to navigate around. Let's look at the issue of reforms. You've seen the reforms from this current administration. Removal of PMS subsidy has taken over 6 months now. The foreign exchange reforms has taken almost 6 months too. And we've seen also the whole turnaround in the social investment program, the suspension and then setting up of interministerial committee. We've also seen several steps, like I earlier said, moving asset, the equity holding of the federal government from the Bureau of Public Enterprise to MOFI. But for you, are these reforms bold enough from what you're seeing to move us from the stagflation phase we're experiencing to sustainable growth within this recovery period? Are those reforms for you very bold and effective?
Yeah, well, if you look at the policy itself, these are very, very bold, wide-reaching, very systematic policy changes. To say, number one, we're taking away the fuel subsidy. That takes courage. That's a very, very big jolt to the system. To say we're going to float the naira, no more subsidy on the naira to dollar exchange. To then say, let's even talk about these two. These are very bold. But why did it go wrong? Because the rollout was mismanaged. Let's talk about the fuel subsidy. When you remove fuel subsidy, it's in effect a tax. You are imposing a tax to raise revenues from the end users in Nigeria. But when you do, any ecosystem, when you increase taxes by 300%, you must give a palliative. You must come back and say, I am going to take from you, but I'll give this to you to sort of lessen the blow. Either you extend the period of removal or you pay the folks that cannot afford to use expensive fuel. In this case, we took away the subsidy. The cost went up, but the palliatives rollout took time. We're talking of 8,000 or so. Then we're talking about, okay, let's give people. We took time, and eventually it took social pressure to make palliatives come in. But by then the ship had sailed. So then we're catching up. We're sharing rice. So the policy is good, but the rollout failed. Same with the float of the Naira. Policy was very, very good. Let's take away the subsidy on the Naira. We did that, but what then happened? We left 42 items in the list. We didn't clarify what capital controls were. And again, we lost the momentum and the good effect of that removal. So we had to go back and say, okay, now we've taken away 44. Oh, now we've done this. Oh, we've done that. So it's the rollout that is a problem. It's not the removal. The policies are very, very good. And again, it's not a choice. We didn't have a choice either to keep subsidies or not. We cannot afford PMS subsidies. So the subsidies had to go. It's not like we took a poll and we said, should we keep it or should we not keep it? We can't afford a subsidy. Nigerians cannot afford anything that is imported. PMS is imported, so we can't afford it. The dollar is imported, so we can't afford it. Hence, the subsidy there makes it feel that we can import, that we can afford to drive this SUV with fuel. We really can't. So when you take away the subsidy, the true picture of the economy comes to bear. Then I just gotta say, I can't afford this. I look for local substitutes. Maybe I'll take a BRT bus and all that kind of stuff. That's how the economy then arranges itself. So to your answer, yes, it was a bold policy, but implementation failed. Now it seems that we're now maybe have better managers, economic managers in place now that will then say, okay, let's now have a more milestone-based reforms. You see what the CBN is doing. You see what the Ministry of Finance is doing, moving those assets in. I think that's a prelude to selling, to an IPO of those assets. That's going to be revenues, maybe efficiency and FDIs flowing to Nigeria. So we now need to allow the economic managers, and they need to move very, very fast. You can't just keep quiet. In an economy like Nigeria, you can't say, I'm working in the scenes and you see when I come out. You've got to hold the hand and move very fast and tell Nigerians what you are doing. So we see where you are going to. That's why you see in America, there's always the government is always speaking. They are announcing this data point. The Minister of Finance is always speaking, because you have to tell the market where you are going to, forward guidance. You just can't wake up and say, we've closed these bank boards. You've got to give forward guidance, profit warning. So there's no shock to the system. Like, this economy can't take shocks per se. So again, bold reforms, implementation was poor, but let's see going forward if we can then get our ducks in a row and get to that promised land. Yeah.
Yeah, and as we wrap up, let's look at the states. The state governments have a very big role to play, because governance at subnational level is very important, and their own program strategies will also help to address the challenges of households and even businesses. So what should be the priority of states in 2024 as you look at stabilizing the economy and unlocking economic opportunities? You've always been posting on your Twitter, which I follow very well, that Lagos cannot just be the only state attracting the huge chunk of capital importation, that's FDIs and FPIs. So how can other states come into the fray?
Again, it goes back to, if you look at the Nigerian government, look at solid minerals, for instance. All the states have solid minerals. It's being published. We all have it there. But how many states are actually going back and saying we want to develop our own local solid minerals or agriculture? Or let's even make it simple. How many states have an economic plan that says we're going to integrate at a regional level to reduce cost and attract investments? Railways has been taken off the exclusive list, so to say. So now states can do railways, but you can't build railway in one state. It's not economic viable. It's only viable if you can connect states together. So if all the states in, say, the South or Southwest or whatever, go to China and say, we want to build a regional railway for 10 states, 12 states, then it makes sense for the Chinese to come and build that railway in. And then you can improve productivity and create wealth. So at the subnational level, you've got to connect to the federal government's economic plan. We can't have silo governance where you say, in this state, we are going to do this. In this state, we're going to do that. In America, everyone knows that you must fund free education, in quotes, at the government level. There's going to be free emergency care. You can't change that. Even if Democrats or Republicans come to power, you can't go in and say, we're not going to fund free education, or we're not going to fund healthcare or social security. What program do we have in Nigeria that says, irrespective of the government coming to power, this program is going to stay forever and ever? The last time we had was environmental sanitation. That was the longest non-political program, whatever you want to call it. So we have to have an economic plan that says, whatever party is in power, we're going to build this express road. Whatever party is in power, we're going to invest in 25% in primary school education. Once we get that, there is now certainty. Any investor from Nigeria knows that if I invest in primary education, no matter what happens with the elections, I will get paid, I will get my monies back from the government. That's how economies are built. It can't be silos. We have to come together, sub-federal, local governance, and then move towards a specific goal. Yeah.
Yes, if I hear you clearly, you're saying that no matter the party, no matter the current economic plans of various states, the important thing is prioritizing healthcare, education, and various social intervention projects that impact the household. And that's very critical in this period as we look at this recovery as a country. Thank you very much, Mr. Kalu Aja, financial analyst, for this very insightful conversation on the macroeconomic outlook for 2024 in Nigeria. We just hope that it will be much knowledge nuggets for both households, businesses, and even government to take on board as we go through this phase. Thank you once again for the time.
Thank you. My pleasure. You have a good day.
To our viewers, if you want to get further insights on this video, visit the ProShare website displayed on the screen and follow our social media platforms to engage further on the show. Till we come your way again, enrich yourself with the knowledge of socio-economic developments around you, because it is the wise thing to do. I'm Ottoabasi Abasiekong. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.